Hi, my name is Ted, and today I'm going to be talking to you about two different groups that were studied back in the 1980s for a 2-year period. The design of the study was to compare Christian groups, which included Pentecostal, Charismatics, and New Age groups. Both groups were seeking healing through their different means. The goal of the study was to compare those two and see if one was coming up with better healing results than the other. The study was done by UCLA professor Deborah Glick. She took two different groups from Baltimore, Maryland, and she compared the two. She had them fill out questionnaires for 6 months. Each person would do a questionnaire for 6 months. Day one, they would have one. Then maybe 3 months down the road, they would fill out another questionnaire, and then finally 6 months later, they filled out the final questionnaire. She's comparing, seeing what they said on day one, what they said on month 6. What needed to be healed was described. In other words, people would talk about things like, I need to be healed from something physical, something spiritual. I need to be healed from something psychological. I need to be healed from something going on in my relationship, etc., etc. So anything that needs to be healed was dealt with in this study. I lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and I went to a charismatic church, and I went to a Pentecostal church when I lived in it back in the 1970s. And a real quick side, in the Baltimore Charismatic Church, I came across the most gifted person I think I've ever seen in my whole life. She was an older lady, and she had a friend who was probably one of the creepiest people I think I have ever met in my whole life. So I had these two people side by side, and that's the contrast. It is so bizarre. But that was my experience with this Baltimore Charismatic Church. What did she find? Well, first of all, there's 160 people in her study, 80 from each group. What we find in the 6-month period is progress in both groups. Both Christians on the one side and New Age on the other side were equal. Both had the same percentage of success, which turned out to be over 50% success. Both had the same limitations. Let me explain further. The majority in both claimed to be healed. However, there were different degrees. First of all, there are different degrees of healing in each group. Somebody might say, my pain was at level 8, it now is at a level 5. This, by the way, is very typical if you study other follow-ups, such as Benny Hinn, Catherine Kuhlman, and Todd Bentley. This is very common. However, when people are talking about a degree of healing, they're not talking about a cure, a complete healing. They're talking about a degree. I feel better, but not there. My foot is still flat. I put this in another video, Catherine Kuhlman video. The guy comes up on stage and he says, this is amazing. I took off my shoes because my pain disappeared, but when I looked at my feet, they're still flat. There is no cure, but his pain is gone. I can pretty much guarantee his pain did return within hours, if not days. So there are different degrees of healing in both groups equally. Secondly, healing was mainly with symptom relief and not structural change or structural cure. All right, so there's different degrees of healing. Healings mainly with symptoms and not cures, and this caught me off guard. I did not see this coming. The description of what needed to be healed from day 1 to month 6 completely changed with half the people. Completely changed. Day 1, lady says, and this is one of the cases, my back is in constant pain. I need healing. Month 6, praise God, my prayer was answered. My son and I get along now. Do you see what happened? There's a complete change in 2 different directions here. First of all, not only is the disease completely changed, but it's also gone from one that's a little bit more difficult to deal with to one that is easier to deal with. One that goes from, if this doesn't heal, it's a sign that maybe God doesn't love me. Okay, sorry, I'm taking that to a really weird direction, but that's the way a lot of people think. Down to, oh look, this was healed. God is so good to me. Or in the case of New Age, it depends upon where you stand in New Age or where your belief systems are, but the world or the universe or the spirits or whatever are so good to me. All right, so that, as I mentioned, caught me completely off guard. I did not see that coming. From the more difficult to the easier. But it also changed in another way. It changed in a way that would help serve the group's belief system that healing exists among us. So people began focusing on what did get healed, and they began to let go of what did not get healed. My conclusion, I still believe in healing. I believe I have seen it. My hope was, however, my real hope was in this video, and I didn't expect it, but I kind of hoped it would happen, that the people, because this study is about groups. It's groups of people, groups that I knew, and groups that I had deep respect, well, some individuals in the groups I had deep respect for. And I hoped they would do a little better. And I mean a little better than their leaders, the Kenneth Copelands, the Andy Womacks, and the people, Benny Hinn's and the Catherine Kuhlmans. I really hoped they would do better. Because I think the leaders, they have their own agendas. My hope was that the people in the common ranks would do better. All right, this is Ted. Have a fantastic day. Adios. Goodbye.